Hello, Gareth. Hello, Carole, and thank you for joining me on my lockdown chat. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Lockdown has treated me fairly well. It's been interesting because we've been having set up a new service, the talent team, which brings together all the various people and departments who have delivered careers and employability and employer engagement across the group, all into one place. So we launched during lockdown, but things are going well, and I hope all the students out there have seen the new Talent Connect facility they can access resources through. How do you do, Carole?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Just carrying on, working and supporting students where we can, and just keeping on.
Although Carole is the first person I've seen from work since, what was that, middle of March?
Indeed, yes. It's just proves that we are still real.
Yeah.
So both of you have been working with students for a long time, and you probably have seen some of the challenges students normally have when transitioning from studying to career move or setting up a business. What's the difference do you see in the challenges, especially now, in the same transition, and what would be your advice in how to overcome them?
Well, clearly, I think the big challenge is at the moment that we're in the midst of this crisis. I wouldn't profess to understand fully the economics of that, other than it's going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher to get that ideal graduate job. There may be less roles around, which just makes it all the more important that while students are at university, they engage with the full range of support that's available to help make them as employable as they can be when they do go to the jobs market, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yes. It's about exploring and using the resources that are available to you at the moment, and not being shy to ask for help, I would have said.
Yeah. I do think there might be a silver lining. I'm always forever an optimist, and that circumstances can also sometimes force your hand a little bit. And for those entrepreneurial students who might have this inkling to start their business, but feels they need to go and get that graduate job experience first, this might make them go a little bit earlier to explore self-employment again, which there is resources to help with at the university via the Enterprise Hub.
Interesting. So one thing that this whole scenario has taught us is it's reviewed the gaps in our systems, whether it's in the government or the institutions, in our own mindset, in our own lives. So with this expectation gap, if I should call it that, as to what we wish we would want and where we are right now, you see this gap and we don't know how to kind of bridge it. So how can we redefine our expectations, set realistic expectations that are still challenging, that are still beneficial or will make us better?
Well, if I may start, I think that crisis or no crisis, it's really, really, really important to have realistic expectations about where your next career move is. So, for example, if you're using the internship, which is part of every course at Coventry University London, as the next step in your career progression, it's understanding what's realistic really from that. So just to give an extreme example, it's not realistic to arrive with no previous work experience and expect to get an internship as a director in a bank, for example. But it's not about quashing those ambitions. It's about, right, okay, that's great, you know where you want to be. What's the next realistic step? And then what we will do as a university is help you get that next realistic step, which is getting some relevant financial experience.
And I think that word relevant is so important, isn't it? That relevant experience won't necessarily be the internship that you perhaps have in your head as your dream internship. But if it is relevant experience and it's going to get you towards your ultimate goal, then it's not just relevant, but it's really valid experience, and putting some validity around the experiences, the internships, the connections that you have with people, and the opportunities that students have actually to make connections during this time. You know, when we think about it, people have actually got more time now, and so perhaps companies wouldn't necessarily have had time to consider questions from students previously, but maybe they do now. So it's taking those relevant opportunities where they can be found, and validating them by really applying yourself to them.
I would just add as well that there are so many opportunities. I'll speak for Coventry University London because that's obviously what we're talking about here, but I'm sure at most universities where proactive students can engage with activities that aren't necessarily core, perhaps extracurricular, but it's those students who take advantage of those opportunities, who just by their participation make themselves significantly more employable when they go to the job market, because it shows they've engaged. And I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted when I say about engaging with all the things there are to do at a university that aren't necessarily sort of compulsory.
And it's also thinking about what is it, as you know, as a student, what can we do now during lockdown? And I'd love to share with you something that I heard yesterday, which I thought was just the most inspiring. There are, certainly in the UK, and I know around the world generally, communities are coming together to support each other.
Yeah.
So villages are coming together, and there are rotas going round where people are actively going and helping each other. And I was speaking with someone yesterday, and she said she'd never had an opportunity to get into management, but lockdown has given her that opportunity because she's part of a whole crew of people in her large village, which is connected to another village, and this is in the UK, where they've got something like 300 volunteers and thousands of people in the community to look after. And so she said, not only am I learning how to manage myself, manage others, manage expectations, manage clients' expectations, you know, we're putting rotas together, we're communicating with doctors' surgeries, we're communicating with supermarkets. She said, suddenly I found myself in a management position. And the experience that I'm getting from it is priceless.
Yeah.
So take those opportunities, either through your internship to improve all of your people skills, or within your communities.
There's certainly lots of opportunities at the moment, you know, in our communities. Agreed. Yeah, I think everyone's trying to do their bit. You know, we see all the great work that the NHS and key workers have done, and I think it's kind of inspired us all to do a little bit extra that we could do. We've all got a role to play, and by doing so, developing ourselves.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Talking about developing yourself, so everyone says that this is the time to kind of upskill and learn something new. But someone will say, I don't even know what to learn, what kind of skill will be good for me in the new normal. What would you tell them?
Okay. Well, I know that this is a topic that's close to Carole and my heart. And you're talking about the new normal. I think the skills that employers are looking for are the same that they've been crying out for decades.
Okay.
So organisations that represent employers, umbrella groups, have been saying the same skills, that time management, teamwork, communication, adaptability, problem solving, creativity. but it's really the skill is how universities really embed those skills within their academic programs so that they have the technical knowledge and those softer skills, plus all the ways that you can develop them outside of the curriculum, such as through internships or volunteering. I think the lockdown situation has made us all work a bit differently and have to be creative in how we continue to deliver not only an acceptable level of service, but the maximum possible. Carole, what do you think?
I think, you're absolutely right, Gareth. Employers haven't changed what they want. And if they're still asking for it, then that sort of suggests that students and people, we're not presenting ourselves with the skills in the way that employers need to see them. So let's just take some of those labels, time management, as Gareth has said, leadership, teamwork, adaptability, flexibility. This is such a wonderful opportunity for students to show how they are adapting, how they are managing themselves, how they are managing their time. So you can imagine, employers will ask, so how did you cope during the lockdown period? And for students to be able then to talk about their skills, how they adapted, how they developed, will really tell an employer whether or not that student has that skill. So out of every crisis, of course, comes an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think the only other thing I would add is that the more challenging the time, the more that employers are looking for entrepreneurs to work in their business. So they often call this now entrepreneurship, where they've got people who've got those really creative entrepreneurial brains, but working within their business.
Absolutely. Employers need people to be proactive in their roles. And when you think of an entrepreneur, someone setting up and running their own business, they of course have to be proactive. They've got to be strategic. They have to be very, very clear in what it is they're doing and why they're doing it, what their product is, etc. A lot of those skills and attributes can be taken, as Gareth has said, into an organisation where you as an employee are the intrapreneur within the organisation. So you are working strategically, you're working in support and with others. You know exactly what your role is and how you're developing yourself. And you know what your company is selling or offering. And you have a very, very clear idea of the company's vision, their mission, their goals. It's the same as whether you're an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur. The difference, of course, is that as an intrapreneur, you're not carrying all of the risks of the business.
Yeah.
While carrying risks as an employee, that your contribution to the business will either make it grow or it won't.
Yeah. So one challenge that most people are having is how to stand out, especially because it's very critical now. Because when things ease up a bit, we are all in a competition, maybe to fit in one career spot or job opportunity, and they're wondering how can I kind of increase or my employability or marketability, even with this lockdown thing that there are not much of opportunities for me to try my hands on. So how can they do that?
I was just take exception possibly with the notion there aren't as many opportunities in the lockdown. Reason being that I think with all challenges there are opportunities, and certainly although it is more difficult in some cases to get into employers because internships just aren't a priority at the moment, there is an argument that it's about the way you sell the opportunity. So certainly with my team, we're really selling it as you're going to need some creative solutions to come out of this and be strong to the employer. We've got bright, fresh minds, fresh pair of eyes for your business. someone who, without any kind of preconceptions, can undertake some research for you, look at existing markets, new markets. There's so much there. What's not to like about that? So we're hoping that we'll go a long way to satisfying the huge target we've got for September, working with such companies who appreciate that bringing in those fresh ideas is great for their business, but clearly it's great for the student as well. Because what better way to demonstrate your value to a future employer than to say, not I would do this or I might do this, I did do this, and here's the reference for the managing director of the company I did it for, go and talk to him. You know, it's far more credible.
I completely agree. Those opportunities are there, and it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about setting expectations and sort of reassessing, if you like, your expectations, reviewing them and setting them in line with the current conditions, because it is still possible to get that internship. It is, you know, business has not stopped. The world is still moving. Okay, slower, but it is still moving. And so there are those opportunities. You know, we are, it's as if we're living in the history books at the moment with this COVID crisis, you know, the likes of which humanity hasn't seen since the Spanish flu. So, of course, it's going to be remembered for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And therefore, if students set their expectations in line with what is possible, then they will have some great stories to tell. Employers, when we emerge, their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, because this is something for the history books. So as students, what did you do during lockdown?
That's a great point. And again, if I might add that flexibility and being realistic, you know, I would urge students who may be going out in September to understand that we're all in the midst of a pandemic, and we all have to make the best of it. Any student who doesn't think that undertaking a virtual internship has no value, or at least the same value as a physical internship, going to the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5:30, I think one thing that will definitely come about in the new norm is that this isn't necessarily an efficient way of working. It doesn't allow balance for a number of other things that might be going on in our lives, and that the world will certainly change towards a more virtual way of working, because we've been forced to work virtually. We've come along so much technologically. Carole will laugh. I remember before the lockdown, you introduced me to Teams for Institute of Directors, things we were doing. I was going, what's that? And now, of course, can you imagine life without Teams? And that's happened in a really short space of time. We've all had to learn. So I think that's moved us forward. So I want to make sure that students get out of the mindset, should they have one, of thinking that it's not a valuable internship unless you're sat in an office somewhere and have got in a lift. It's not the case. That's not where the future's necessarily going to be. You must have heard loads of chief executives talking about, you know, the huge cost of the property that they have, and the lockdown really teaching them people aren't less productive because they're not sat at a desk in London. In many cases, we're seeing that they're more productive. So that's my big challenge to students going out in September, is to look for what they can gain out of whatever the form of internship is. It's kind of irrelevant whether you're sat on site or sat off site. It's about undertaking something that you can speak to an employer about and be really proud of.
So making it a bit more practical for a student who was neither a student ambassador or a student rep, or didn't do anything like participatory in school, but now wants to stand out, what kind of expectations should a person set, or how can they sell themselves to an employer or a recruiter?
Okay, I would, again, naturally, my tendency is to talk about an internship here.
Yeah.
Because the benefit you have with coming to an organisation like Coventry University London is that those internships are part of a long history of us working with organisations and them understanding that these are an integral part of our courses, which they appreciate because they know that then we're releasing graduates who have practical experience as well as the theoretical experience. What that means is a lot of the employers we work with understand that our students have limited experience. They understand that because we've already got a relationship with them. So they are willing to take our students because they know that they are potentially getting a very cost-effective resource, but at the same time they're knowing that they're helping that student develop those crucial things that you're talking about. That would be more difficult if they were doing it potentially on their own, although I must admit there are some students who I'm full of admiration for who do find their own internships and get exactly what they want to do, and maybe they already have some previous work experience. But I'm saying in order to take advantage of what's already there and to develop those things that make you stand out, get involved with that option on your course, because we're there to help to get you that opportunity, which will give you what you're asking about, which is how to stand out.
Absolutely. And if you think about those words, how can I stand out from others? I would challenge students to go find a mirror, look at yourself in the mirror and ask that question and think to yourself, am I expecting somebody to do this for me? Am I really saying, I need to stand out, how can somebody stand me out? Or am I saying, I need to stand out, how am I going to stand out? And when students take that responsibility for themselves and take advantage of everything that's on offer in the university and the terrific team Gareth has got around him that are there ready to help students on the journey that they want to take. It's about the student themselves saying, what am I doing to stand out, and where can I look for support to help me do that?
Interesting. And okay, so now looking forward to the new normal and the way of working, we know that 9 to 5 might not be the norm anymore. What are some of the other changes that we expect to see, or the shifts in the workplace? What is the future of work that we should expect to see?
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows, other than everything I'm hearing in news and current affairs are that owners of businesses are saying that they've been completely taken aback by how people have responded to working from home and working flexibly. And so that is why I'm pinning my colours to that's going to be the main thing that's going to change. There's often been such a kind of stigma attached to working from home or working flexibly. In the type of role I do, which is business development, it's a little bit more accepted because you're out seeing clients normally, not at the moment. So you're not necessarily expected to be at your desk, but there always has been this big kind of idea, if you're not at your desk, you're not working. If you ask our student population, I think most of them would completely challenge that, because you're better than that. You don't think in those kind of confines. We've got technology, why wouldn't we use technology? There's always going to be a place for face-to-face.
Yeah.
I depend on face-to-face. My role depends on face-to-face. It's part of creating a relationship, a deep relationship that I can do on Teams and virtually whilst I have to, but it doesn't replace. There's some services who you're accessing virtually at the moment. So if I think about my colleagues who are in the graduate talent team, who are providing careers advice via TAN Connect at the moment. It's all virtual. It's okay, and it helps us carry on delivering a service. But again, I don't think it replaces, or ever will, face-to-face, real customer kind of understanding and customer satisfaction that for me is essential within universities. Universities were perhaps the last to the table, perhaps in terms of thinking of students as customers. It's still quite controversial, but for me, students are customers, and we have to provide good customer service. Yeah. So that face-to-face bit I don't think will ever go. I'm sorry, I think I probably drifted off your question, but I'm just saying that the virtual side of things will be something that does remain.
So I love the passion with which Gareth is speaking, because you're absolutely right. As human beings, we do have that face-to-face need, but the world in which we are currently living is forcing us to think about how we survive differently. And just as you were speaking, Gareth, a thought struck me, and the memory of when we first started using Teams. We know students are communicating through Teams with their team formations at the moment. Providing everybody in the team is agreeable to this, what a brilliant opportunity for self-development as students are engaged in a team conversation using Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever platform they're using, and record themselves and then listen to their contribution after the meeting. You will get some students who perhaps won't have said anything, and therefore their contribution will have been zero. You'll get other students who dominate the conversation, and their contribution will have been 1,000%. And you'll get variations in between. But if you, as the student, thinking about the skills that you want to develop and thinking about how you explain those skills to an employer, you know, I joined team meetings with my virtual team. I recorded every session and I reviewed my performance after every session. I would be looking at that student thinking, sign that one right up now, because they understand the value of self-development and reflection.
Yeah.
So, you know, use the current situation to the advantage. But yeah, Gareth's right. Nothing really replaces face-to-face.
Awesome.
If I might just add one little thing, it's not in. I don't think it's in any kind of formal skills things we talk about, but from working with employers on behalf of universities for, we'll just say, a long time, there's some real basic things that you can really just make sure you convey to an employer in an interview, and also you demonstrate when you go into their place of work. One of those is so kind of simple, but it's likability. Make sure you come across as willing, able, engaged, that you offer other people a coffee. If you're making a coffee, you become part of that round. It sounds like such a given, but it's not. And you will go a long way generally in life if you're seen to be that team player who will help others, because I guarantee you'll get more back. You'll get more back, and you look, or I think of the workplace of, sometimes people aren't as willing to help other colleagues. It's such an easy thing to do, and it makes your day better. If you're nice to people, you feel better about yourself, and it goes a long way. Employers want people who can fit in, not ruffle too many feathers, and then everyone gels and everyone's strengths come out. We understand how the strengths and weaknesses knit together well. Understanding your weaknesses, I'm going to shut up in a sec. But that's nothing. I know what my weaknesses are. I'm not necessarily willing to put them out there on the internet. But it's genuinely, I know where my natural tendencies are and where they're not.
Yeah.
And that awareness, and I would urge all students, if there's any kind of self-awareness that you could get involved with. Eugenia, did you do the professional development simulation?
Yes, I did.
That kind of awareness you get from seeing yourself in a task. There's things I've done. I'm fascinated by it, you know, by the way you think and the way your natural tendencies are. If you truly understand yourself and you get over the surprises, it's really, really powerful. And I would urge all students to challenge how they think about themselves and urge, maybe seek opinions from others about how they actually are.
So finally, how can we make smart decisions regarding our education, our careers, or starting a business? What kind of smart decisions can we make?
It's around thinking about what is it, what do we want? So if I was applying this to myself, what do I want? I might think, I don't know. And so then have conversations with people that understand you, have conversations with people that are aware of your strengths, your abilities, areas of development, and then set about a plan to be the very best version of yourself you can possibly be by the time we emerge back into a more public world. So being smart, it comes back to being specific, measurable. Is it achievable, realistic, and timely? So think about what you want to do, set yourself a plan, and then benchmark yourself against that SMART acronym: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Gareth?
The only thing I would add to that, Carole, is to be honest with yourself. Do it for yourself. Whatever decisions you're making, try not to be influenced. And I know this is easier said than done, but try not to be influenced by, you know, parental pressure or peer pressure, or this is about you and what you're going to do. And another thing is, I'm going to make a little play for, you know, entrepreneurship again. I do believe that the longer you leave that, the harder it potentially gets. Because when you're straight out of university, you know, you're kind of there, you may be on your own, you haven't got other things to consider, other risks to take into account. And the longer you leave it, the more difficult it is to do. So faced with a challenging graduate environment, might be an ideal time to go, do you know what, I'm just going to give my business a go, because what have I got to lose?
Okay, that's bold. But would you advise for a career change within this time, or just to stick with what you've studied, what you know?
I will answer that kind of quite personally, because I don't know if there is a correct answer. I think if you are in a job you enjoy and there are opportunities still around you, I would personally stay where you are.
But if you're in a job that you don't enjoy, I would say now is a good time to really analyse what is it you don't enjoy about it. What could you do to change within it? What conversations could you have with your line manager to help you with some self-development or professional development? Because, you know, I'm with Gareth on relentless optimism. I cannot think of a situation that can't be improved upon. And so if you're in a job that you don't enjoy, take the challenge of asking yourself, what would need to change for you to enjoy it? Just do it. There is no substitute for just getting on and thinking about what it is you need to change in yourself and set about a plan to do so.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Carole. Thank you very much, Gareth. Before you go, just your last words on certain expectations for students. Like, what are you telling them as they are transitioning in this time?
Gareth.
I just think, stay with it, stay with your ambitions, stay with your plan, because nothing has to change necessarily. There might be different ways of going about it, but if your plan was to do an internship in September, still do an internship in September. It's still an opportunity. It's still there. Be resilient. This is your chance to demonstrate resilience. We all need to demonstrate resilience. It's another thing employers look for. And let's take out the positive things that have come out of this situation. And one of them is going to be new ways of working. And I think that's a really welcome thing. I think it's something that certainly suits our generation who are graduating. And it's going to be a much more kind of different way of working, and it should be embraced.
I agree. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And have courage and stick to the plan.
Awesome. Thank you very much, both of you. And I hope to have you back on my lockdown chat. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenia.
Lovely speaking to you.